Hi, this is Chris Young. Welcome to episode 85 of Contemplating Life, Oscar Edition. For several weeks now, we've been building up to my discussion of the Oscar-nominated Best Picture, Wicked. I'll note that when I began this series, the title of the film was Wicked Part 1, but now it has been shortened to just Wicked. The second half of the adaptation of the Broadway musical is now called Wicked for Good and is scheduled for release in November of this year. Now, unfortunately this year, I did not have time to edit in trailers, movie clips, etc. into the YouTube version of the podcast. So be sure to check out the links in the description for articles and videos related to this year's films. As I mentioned in the previous episode, this is the story of Elphaba, a.k.a. the Wicked Witch of the West, played by Cynthia Erivo, and her school friendship with Glinda, a.k.a. the Good Witch of the North, played by Ariana Grande. It's based on the hit Broadway musical that has been running since 2003, which is, in turn, based on the Gregory Maguire novel, Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. The film opens with a shot of the witch's iconic pointed black hat, sitting atop a puddle of water and surrounded by dying sparks. Obviously, this is just seconds after Dorothy has doused her with a bucket of water, causing her to melt. The film then goes to Munchkin Land, where Glinda arrives in her floating bubble to confirm to the Munchkins, yes, indeed, the Wicked Witch is dead. There's a song called Nobody Mourns the Wicked, which is a stand-in for Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. See, the musical creators were prohibited from using anything from the original 1939 Wizard of Oz. Someone asked Glinda if she knew the Wicked Witch when she was younger, and she says yes, and then we begin a flashback that gives us the complete backstory. It quickly became apparent to me that this is not a children's story. We hear that Elphaba's mother had an extramarital affair with a stranger. The stranger gave her some sort of green liquid, and when Elphaba was born, she came out with green skin. And not knowing what to expect from the story, I was surprised it started out with this rather adult theme. Although I was initially surprised that the story had adult themes like the affair of Elphaba's mother, but I found out that the book is much more adult than the movie or the musical. Author Gregory Maguire dives deeply into many adult topics, including speculation that the Wicked Witch is actually a transsexual, with no evidence, it's just pure prejudice and hatred. He also crafts multiple religions and political parties, through which he explores various controversial issues. There's even a character who has two penises and has an affair with a mother and a daughter. How bizarre. Unfortunately, neither the musical or the film go that far, except for the story that Elphaba's mother had this extramarital affair. I suppose you could conclude that the rest of the story was kid-friendly, and the film is only rated PG, not even PG-13. We later learn that Elphaba has a sister who is in a wheelchair. Her name is Nessa Rose. She's portrayed by Marissa Bode, who in real life had a spinal cord injury at age 11 in a car accident, and now uses a wheelchair. We're told Nessa Rose's condition is because her mom took some sort of herbal remedy in an attempt to prevent her second child from turning out green. Now, there's a scene of Nessa Rose and Elphaba as young girls, both being teased about being different. This bit of the backstory is not in the Broadway musical. When Elphaba gets angry, her magical abilities start to manifest themselves. Small rocks begin hovering off the ground as her temper flares. We then fast forward the story to when the girls are going off to college at Shiz University. Glinda is a rich, spoiled brat who thinks that everything revolves around her. Nessa Rose is there to enter the university, but Elphaba is not enrolled. She's simply there to help her disabled sister settle in. Someone tries to push Nessa Rose's wheelchair to help her get to her dorm room, but she insists that she's not helpless, and she can get there herself. When they refuse to listen to her, Elphaba becomes angry and unleashes her magic, which flings several objects into the air, including her sister in the wheelchair. Now, the disabled actress who played the part did her own stunt work for this scene, and there are behind-the-scenes videos that reveal she was suspended on multiple wires attached to the wheelchair, which were later digitally removed. In an interview, Bode explained that she was quite proud she had been allowed to do this stunt on her own. And this further reinforces the concept that neither she nor her character always needs special help. Now, as you might guess, at this point I was totally hooked. The realistic depiction of an independent disabled woman was so spot on that it left my jaw hanging open. And Elphaba's defense of her sister was not because Nessa Rose needed help. On the contrary, she defended the idea that her sister was capable and independent. I was shocked and amazed that an adult fairy tale perfectly depicted this disabled character. As you know from our previous discussions, I identified with Cinderella daydreaming in her own little corner in her own little chair. Well, now we're only a few minutes into the film Wicked, and that film's saying to me, Chris, you think Cinderella is something special for a disabled kid? Hold my beer while I show you something you've never seen in a fairy tale. When Elphaba accidentally displays her magical powers, it catches the attention of Madame Morrible, who teaches magic at Shiz University. Morrible is played by Oscar-winning actress Michelle Yeoh. Madame Morrible immediately insists that Elphaba enter the university so that she can study magic. Through a series of misunderstandings, Elphaba ends up roommates with the overprivileged Glinda, who was promised a private dorm room. Along the way, we're introduced to a couple of other characters. There's Fiyero, who's a bit of an airhead frat boy who's only there to party. And we also meet Bach, who is from Munchkinland. And by the way, in this version of Oz, Munchkins are a bit short, but they are not portrayed by little people like they were in the original film. In fact, Elphaba and Nessa Rose's father is the mayor of Munchkinland. Both Elphaba and Nessa Rose are treated poorly at the university because they're so different. Now, Bach has a crush on Glinda, and she suggests that he befriend Nessa Rose as a favor to her. Bach is happy to oblige because he thinks it'll gain him favor with Glinda. Of course, Nessa Rose is ecstatic that some boy would show interest in her. Neither she nor Bach understand how they're being manipulated. And Bach is blinded to the realization that he's being heartless towards Nessa Rose. Eventually, Glinda begins to feel sympathy for her bizarre roommate Elphaba, after initially despising her, and they begin to form a strange bond. Some of the teachers at Shiz University are talking animals, most notably Dr. Dillamond, who is the goat. He's voiced by Peter Dinklage. We discover there's a conspiracy going on in Oz against talking animals, is trying to force them to shut up. Eventually, Dr. Delamont is arrested and hauled away in a cage, causing him to lose the ability to speak. He's then replaced by another teacher who enjoys experimenting on animals, specifically a small lion cub. This outrages Elphaba, and her magic manifests itself again. She casts a spell, knocking out everyone in the classroom except for her, Fiero, and the cub. They take the cub out to the woods to release him, and they do so by hopping on bicycles that are identical to the one ridden by Miss Gulch in the original Wizard of Oz when she kidnaps Toto. Seeing Elphaba riding that bicycle with an animal in the basket sent me into hysterical laughter. My sister Carol immediately began singing Miss Gulch's theme. Da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. I had to pause the movie until we stopped laughing. It was just too perfect an Easter egg. Now, Dr. Delamont always had trouble pronouncing Galinda's name using his goat voice. After he is arrested and loses his ability to speak, Galinda announces she will henceforth be known as Glinda, which is how Dr. Delamont pronounced it. Eventually, Elphaba gets an invitation to go to the Emerald City and meet the wizard, who's anxious to mentor her and her magical abilities. At the last minute, she invites Galinda to join her. Upon arrival, we get the backstory on how the wizard arrived in Oz, via a dramatic presentation featuring cameo appearances by Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. They originated the roles of Glinda and Elphaba on Broadway. I'm certain their appearance in this cameo delighted many fans of the original musical. The entire Emerald City experience contains multiple Easter eggs to the original film. Finally, we meet the wizard, who is magnificently portrayed by Jeff Goldblum. I don't think it's a spoiler to tell you that the wizard isn't exactly what he says he is. And Elphaba sees through him and casts a spell that allows her to fly on a broom. She escapes singing the iconic song Defying Gravity. Madame Morrible gets on a PA system announcing to the entire Emerald City that Elphaba is a wicked witch and she must be stopped. And that's the end of the film. Now, it may seem like I've spoiled the entire movie, but trust me, there are plenty of details that I've left out. And at the end of this episode, I'll have some very serious spoilers where I reveal things I've figured out about the plot along the way, and things that I've heard will be in the second film, based on what happens in Act 2 of the musical. It sort of saddened me when I realized that my disabled hero in the film, Nessa Rose, is the one who gets a house dropped on her by Dorothy in the original story. The musical's composers were not permitted to use anything from the 1939 film, but there is a musical Easter egg. The first 7 notes of Over the Rainbow are hidden in a couple of songs from the musical. It's in a motif called the Unlimited motif. The notes are the same, but the rhythm and the harmonies surrounding them are different. You see, once you copy 8 notes of a melody, you're at risk for copyright infringement. So composer Stephen Schwartz stopped at 7 notes. There's a video linked in the description where he explains this. My sister Carol and I, who are both huge fans of the original Wizard of Oz, thoroughly enjoyed the film, and we plan to watch it again sometime soon. The combination of the phenomenally spot-on treatment of a disabled character and the amazing Easter eggs referring to the original 1939 film made it a completely enjoyable experience for both of us, and we anxiously await the second part. I'll remind you again at the end of this podcast, I will have some huge spoilers that I've learned about the second part of the story. In addition to its Best Picture nomination, it was also nominated for musical score, makeup and hairstyling, sound, visual effects, production design, and costume design, all of which are much deserved. I don't ever have any opinion about a nomination for film editing. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are nominated for lead actress and supporting actress, respectively, and those nominations are much deserved. And the film won the Golden Globe for cinematic and box office achievement. IMDb lists 304 nominations and 99 wins. But keep in mind, they list some pretty obscure awards that nobody ever heard of. Although Jeff Goldblum did not receive a supporting actor nomination, I thought he was perfectly cast in the role and did a wonderful job. The film has earned over $728 million in worldwide box office, on an estimated budget of $150 million. It still may be showing in some theaters. It's available for purchase on digital download on many platforms, and it will be coming to Peacock TV in late March. There's a 1-hour behind-the-scenes documentary called Defying Gravity, The Curtain Rises on Wicked, which aired on NBC and is currently streaming on Peacock. I highly recommend it. You'll be amazed at the detail that went into constructing the massive practical sets for the film. There's very minimal CGI involved. Stay tuned after my typical closing for some spoilers about what we can expect in the sequel, currently scheduled for release in November of this year. So as always, if you find this podcast educational, entertaining, enlightening, or even inspiring, consider sponsoring me on Patreon for just $5 per month. You'll get early access to the podcast and other exclusive content. Although I have some financial struggles, I'm not in this for the money, but every little bit helps. As always, my deepest thanks to my financial supporters. I just don't have the words to express what that means. And even if you can't provide financial support, post some links so I can grow my audience. All my back episodes are available, so check those out. And feel free to comment or leave questions or other feedback wherever you found the podcast. I'll see you next time as we continue contemplating life. Until then, fly safe, everyone. Okay, now do not proceed unless you want the plot of Part 2 spoiled. It didn't take me long to conclude that the wizard was the mysterious stranger who had the affair with Elva's mother and drugged her with the magical green liquid. I also correctly speculated that the small lion cub rescued by Elphaba and Fiyero turns out to be the cowardly lion. I did not predict that Fiyero would become the Scarecrow and Bach would become the Tin Man. That was a surprise. It turns out that Madame Morrible's limited magical powers are strongest in her ability to control the weather, and she is responsible for conjuring up the tornado that brings Dorothy to Oz. Therefore, she is responsible for the death of Nessa Rose. All right, I'll give you one more chance to stop this podcast before I reveal the biggest spoiler of all. You've been warned. Okay, here goes. I'm also proud to say that I did guess this one. Elphaba, the Wicked Witch, did not die when Dorothy threw the bucket of water on her. She faked her own death. Now, the reason I knew this was I didn't see how they could spend this entire story trying to redeem Elphaba as simply a misunderstood and tortured soul who was branded as wicked when she really wasn't, and then end up killing her. That would just be too tragic. So I figured out she probably really wasn't dead. I can't wait to see part 2. But until then, fly safe, everyone. Or should I say, defy gravity.